Let's stop here. This is the final second of Amir Locke's life. Minneapolis PD conducted a no-knock warrant. Locke was not named in the search warrant, and he was in legal possession of a firearm.
In the video, they open the door with the key and announce police search warrant before they enter the apartment.
That's not true. If you go back and watch the video, they do not say until they cross the threshold of the door. It's just not true.
I definitely encourage everyone to view the video and make that assessment for themselves.
Interim Minneapolis Police Chief Amelia Huffman stated officers announced before entering their tactics regardless left an innocent person to perish.
Police search warrant! Police search warrant!
This is what I would call the anatomy of a cover-up. This is unacceptable. I'm sorry, it is. When I agreed to work with you on the work group, we talked about the importance of transparency and accountability. And here, what we are seeing is business as usual. And you know this, Amelia. You know this, Jacob.
This is civil rights attorney and former Minneapolis NAACP president, Nakima Levy-Armstrong, and she has had enough.
I don't know how you guys slept that night. I couldn't sleep at night. Tears from a mother's perspective, thinking about what happened. I saw the picture of Amir. He looks like a boy. My son is 17 years old. He has slept on his friends' couches for sleepovers. So we cannot sit here and whitewash this and pretend that it's okay. You knew that I was not going to stand for police violence and a push for accountability, yet you asked me to be a part of the work group. And I knew what I thought I was signed up for. This isn't what I signed up for.
This latest incident is igniting calls to put an end to no-knock warrants, where officers can enter the premises without notifying residents.
Now, if you remember, after the death of 26-year-old Breonna Taylor in Louisville, where officers saw limited to no punishment, Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear signed a bill into law limiting the use of no-knock warrants.
Officer Mark Hanneman fired 3 shots, 2 of them hitting Locke in the chest and 1 in the wrist. Locke was later pronounced dead at the hospital. Minneapolis Interim Police Chief Amelia Huffman says SWAT officers were executing both a knock and no-knock high-risk search warrant in a homicide investigation. Huffman says Locke was not named in the search warrant, and it's unclear if he is connected to the homicide investigation.
Respectfully, as high risk as it may be, they took an innocent man's life. No-knock warrants should simply not be a thing.
We're tired of the cover-ups. We're tired of the excuses. And to hide behind the St. Paul Police Department, the deadliest police force in the state of Minnesota, is unacceptable. You all had no business agreeing to carry out a warrant, and now you're claiming that's part of their investigation. You don't know. Well, why the hell did you all sign up to do this in the first place? There was a homicide that happened at 1-something in the morning on Hennepin Avenue. Someone was killed, and then the person drove away in a black SUV. They're still at large.
This is yet another example of why we need to put an end to these kinds of search warrants so that one day Black Americans will be able to sleep safely in their beds at night.
When the people voted to re-elect you, Jacob, they not only showed that they wanted to see a new leader, right? Not saying you're not the person who got re-elected, you got re-elected. But what they were expecting is a new beginning. That's why they gave you more power and authority. So that is what we want to see as the residents of Minneapolis. We don't want to see cover-ups. We don't want to see whitewashing. People are asking very simple questions that have still not been answered. Amelia, you're saying you want to be the chief? Then act like it. Demonstrate integrity. Don't cover up for what those cops did. If they knew that the kid had a gun as he started waking up, say, drop your weapon. They didn't do that. One cop opened fire and took the life of a child who was trying to go back into his blanket. Any mom can see what happened there. So I can't tolerate the whitewashing. I'm sorry, y'all. We can't do this. I know you have your narrative. I know you have your script. And no, you guys didn't personally go shoot somebody. But you do have the opportunity to make it right, to talk about the fact that you changed the no-knock warrant policy. Where's the evidence of that? That wasn't present on what happened to Amir Locke.
The SWAT team had been carrying out a warrant on Wednesday morning for the St. Paul Police Department's homicide unit, wrote the New York Times.
There's people being murdered unjustly and not being held accountable.
Armstrong, who you saw rightfully confronting Interim Chief Huffman and Mayor Frey, said Locke's family told her Locke was a licensed gun owner with a concealed carry permit, that he didn't live in that apartment, that police had not been looking for him, and that he wasn't one of the 3 suspects named in the warrant. Huffman even admitted that Locke isn't named in the warrants. She said it isn't clear how or whether Locke is connected to the homicide investigation, which she said is under the control of the St. Paul PD. That agency has released very few details thus far, and the warrants weren't publicly available as of Thursday.
Cops are getting paid leave for killing people. That's not right.
Armstrong and other activists angrily confronted the mayor and interim chief at their news conference, with Armstrong calling the city's release of info the anatomy of a cover-up. Another activist blasted the pair for a news release Wednesday that referred to Locke as a suspect.
I have experienced this. People close to me have experienced this. So it's something that needs to be addressed.
Minneapolis did announce a new policy on no-knock entries aimed at limiting the likelihood of bad outcomes. Officials said that officers would be required to announce their presence, except in certain circumstances like hostage situations. Clearly, it hasn't worked.
People are dying in vain because this country isn't holding their end of the bargain up.
Officer Mark Hanneman, as identified by the city of Minneapolis, then shot at and hit Locke. The police department says aid was immediately provided, but he was pronounced dead at Hennepin County Medical Center.
I'll continue to sit. I'm going to continue to stand with the people that are being oppressed. When there's significant change and I feel like that flag represents what it's supposed to represent, I'll stand.
Paul Applebaum, a private defense attorney, said no-knock warrants are often used in drug and violent crime cases, but that with the expansion of surveillance technology, police should be able to apprehend a suspect without such a show of force. It seems like the risk is greater than the reward of preserving evidence or not having a shootout or all that, said Applebaum, who has sued officers for alleged misconduct. It's like, just go sit in the lobby behind a newspaper and wait until he comes out. Another problem, he says, is that judges tend to be deferential to law enforcement, signing off on no-knock warrants, quote, without thinking about the potential repercussions if something goes wrong. And this is what happens, he said.
I'm not going to stand up and show pride in a flag for a country that oppresses black people and people of color.
Huffman said the officers loudly and repeatedly announced police search warrant before crossing the threshold into the apartment, but the footage released Thursday raised questions about that initial account, showing several officers rushing into the apartment at the same time that they announced their presence, giving Locke little time to react before he was shot. Although the footage appears to show the barrel of Locke's gun aimed toward the ground, Huffman said it was aimed toward the officer out of frame. USA Today added Locke, who was wrapped in a blanket, starts to rise. He can be seen holding a gun with his finger off the trigger. Police said in an initial press release that Locke aimed the gun in the direction of the officers, but it's unclear from the video where it's pointed. Huffman confirmed Thursday that Locke was not the subject of the warrant and that police were still gathering info about why he was at the scene. Asked why police had initially described Locke as a suspect, Huffman blamed a lack of information in the immediate aftermath of the shooting, although a police incident report made public Thursday appears to indicate that officers at the scene knew Locke's identity within a half hour of the shooting. Again, Crump and Storms said Locke has several family members in law enforcement and has no criminal history, and he was in legal possession of a firearm at the time of his death. Locke would not have been required to have a permit to possess the weapon in a private residence. One of Amir Locke's cousins said Thursday there was nothing violent and hot-tempered about him. He was totally the opposite, said 21-year-old Irvin Locke Jr., who recalled the two of them catching up on the phone just last week. All he did was crack jokes, he said. He said the man he's affectionately known all their lives by the nickname Simo was no street person. All he was into was music and playing basketball. He stayed to himself.
You guys aren't going to waste my goddamn time. I'm not here for it. We fought too long, too hard. There's people in jail, including Cortez Rice, trying to get the court to show what's happening in the courtroom so people can see what's going on. People have put their lives on the line because we're ready for change. So we're expecting from this point forward for you guys to do something different. I'm not playing. We're not here for it. We're not here for it. I'm only committed to working on this work group if you all are committed to being honest and transparent and not covering up. Thank you.